All right, so to pick up where we left off on Thursday. So on Thursday, we started solving using the trig ratios to find missing sides. So we can use them to set up ratios. We can also use them to find missing sides. So remember, if you know two sides, then you can just use the Pythagorean theorem. But if you only know one side, then you have to use trig. So to use trig to solve a right triangle, first you label your triangle, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. You use the angle that they gave you to label the triangle. Then you identify the trig function based on the information that you have. So one of the sides is going to be completely blank. So if you have that blank side, that eliminates two of the formulas. So you're using sine, cosine, tangent. Whatever side is blank is going to cancel out two of the formulas, which means there's only going to be one left over. So once you figure out the leftover formula, you plug in your numbers, and then you cross multiply and solve. So again, doing trig does involve you to have a scientific or a graphic calculator. I also showed on Thursday how you can utilize your phone's calculator to get to the trig functions. Most of you who have an iPhone, it has a scientific calculator in there. If you have an Android, it's been a while since I've used the Android, so you're kind of on your own to figure that part out. So, in class on Thursday, we did 2 examples of finding missing sides. We're going to do 2 more examples of finding missing sides before we put it all together to solve on a triangle. So let's do examples 3 and 4. So example 3 and example 4. We're only solving for the side that has the label on it. So for example 3, we're solving for x. So the first step is still the same. Label the triangle. So we label the triangle based off of the angle that was given to you. You were given 57 degrees. So across from that angle, whatever side is across from that angle, that's your opposite. Across from the right angle, whatever side is across from it, that is your hypotenuse, which means the side that's left over is the adjacent. So your first step is to label. First step is the label. So your second step is then to determine what trig function you're going to use. There's only 3 of them that you can use. So step 2 is to pick the formula. There's only 3 possible formulas that we're using. There's sine, which is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent, which is opposite over adjacent. So it has to be one of those 3. So when you look at your problem, the hypotenuse has an x on it. The opposite has a 10 on it. The adjacent has nothing on it. Adjacent has nothing. So we cannot use a formula that has adjacent in it. So that means cosine is eliminated, tangent is eliminated. So the only formula we could use is the sine formula. Any questions before we continue? Again, if you have questions, either type them in the chat or come off mute and ask. Do not wait until potentially recovery week to then start asking the questions. Because during recovery week, if you fall into that boat, all I'm going to do is direct you to the videos that were already produced of me teaching it, and then you have to start doing the work. Don't wait until then. If something doesn't click, then. So what do you want to know about the adjacent side? So you can't use the adjacent side because there's absolutely nothing on it. There's no number on it. There's no number on that side. There's no variable on that side. So there's literally nothing on that side. So since there's nothing on that side, it's not going to help you to try to use it. So again, some of y'all, that's what I need some of you all to do more of. Ask questions. Time is starting to run out on this school year. And looking at some of the grades, some of you all unfortunately are on the wrong side of needing to repeat this class. So, got the formula. Now let's plug in what we know. The angle they gave to us, that's 57 degrees. The opposite has a 10. The hypotenuse has an x. So that takes care of step 3. Plug in what we know. And step 4 is to solve. So we solve by cross multiplying. Take sine of 57, put it over 1. Then we cross multiply. We have x times the sine of 57 and 1 times 10. So x times the sine of 57, 1 times 10. So 1 times 10, that's easy enough. 1 times 10 is 10. Sine of 57, if we put that into the calculator, here's our calculator. Again, make sure that your calculator is in degrees. If you have one of the blue calculators, if you have a blue scientific calculator like this, it is forever in degrees. Let's see, Tyler, I think the one time you were in class, I think you had one of these calculators. Yours might be a different color, but yours is forever in degrees, so you don't have to worry about anything. It's primarily those with graphic calculators who have to check, and sometimes they'll switch without us knowing. So, we're looking at sine of 57 degrees, sine 57, 0.8386. So that 6 is going to force the 8 to become a 9. That's 0.839. That's 0.839 x equals 10. You still have to get x by itself. Divide both sides by 839. So 10 divided by 0.839. 11.918. That's a 9. So your final answer is 11.919. So again, it's not a hard problem. It is a problem that's going to require you to put in some work. It's going to require you to show some work. So those of you who are not showing your work, then when you turn in your homework and I give you a 0, don't complain about it either. Any questions, example 3? Yes, you round up because the number behind the 8 was a 9. Remember, 5 and up, you round up. 4 and below, you round down. Which is just leaving the number alone. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, rounding counts. Everything counts. Just because, just like if you're working a job, you want your boss to get your check right. When you're doing your work, you need to make sure every single part is on point. Every single part has to be on point. That's simple. We're not going to accept anything less or do anything less. Any questions before we do example 4? All right, example 4. So example 4, same type of problem. So we have our 4 steps. So let's do our 4 steps. First step, label the problem. 32 is the angle that they gave you. So across from 32 is your opposite. Across from your right angle is your hypotenuse. So 13 has to be the adjacent. 13 is the adjacent. So you're taking care of the labeling. Step 2 is to pick the formula. So look at the 3 sides. Opposite has an X on it. Adjacent has a 13 on it. Hypotenuse has absolutely nothing on it. So we're not going to use a formula that has hypotenuse. So sine is not going to get used. Cosine is not going to get used. Tangent is the formula that we're going to use. So tangent is the formula that's going to get used. Any questions, steps 1 or 2? So again, if you're still stuck on why we don't use hypotenuse, think of it this way. What side had the variable on it? The opposite. What side has a number on it already? That's the adjacent. So hypotenuse doesn't contribute anything to you solving the problem. It doesn't contribute anything. So why use it? Why use it if it's not going to contribute anything? Any questions? Steps 1 or 2? If not, we'll definitely keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. So let's fill in what we know. The angle that they gave you is 32. So tan 32 equals opposite is x, adjacent is 13. So we plugged in what we know. We plugged in what we know. Now we solve it. We put that over 1. Cross multiply. So tan 32 gets multiplied times 13. One gets multiplied times x. So we'll let the calculator do a little work. 1 times x is x. Tangent of 32. We go to our calculator for it. 13 times tangent of 32. So you can put it in all at once and get to your answer. You can put this in all at once and get to your answer, which would be 8.123. If you choose to do it part by part, that's okay too. Tangent of 32 is 0.6248, so 0.625. And then 13 times 0.625 is 0.123. Any questions on example 4? Question example 4, last call before we start part F. All right, and part F. So this is the part that we're starting it today. We will finish it tomorrow. And that's solving a right triangle. So when you solve a right triangle, When you solve a right triangle, that means find the measure of all the missing sides and all the missing angles. All the missing sides and all the missing angles. The plus side is the things that you needed in order to solve this type of problem, you already know how to do. We've done them already. So the things that you need to know in order to solve this type of problem, you already know how to do. So we'll definitely work through one example today. And we'll finish the other example up tomorrow, which will leave plenty of time in class tomorrow for you to work on your quiz, work on the homework that's due Wednesday, or work on the homework that's due on Thursday. Again, for some of you, you gotta do work if you're gonna pass. It's that simple. If you're not gonna do any work, then you might as well let your counselor know that you're gonna retake second semester. You know, I don't say that to be hurtful, I just say that because I'm gonna keep it 100. That's it. So, if you are solving for a triangle, that means you're finding everything that's missing. So we first have to look at what's missing. So for example 1, what are the things that are missing? So we don't know side AC. We don't know side CB. And you don't know angle A. So you're missing 3 things. You're missing those 3 parts. So that's what you're missing. So whenever we're missing something, we give them variables. So we give them variables. So side AC, you're going to make X, BC, Y, and angle A, Z. So those are the 3 things we're missing. So your first step is to identify what you're missing. Identify what you are missing. Step 2 is now to label that triangle. You still label the triangle the same way you've been doing. They gave you a 53-degree angle. So across from 53 is your opposite. Across from the right angle is your hypotenuse. So Y is your adjacent. Any questions before we continue? All right, so third step is to find the missing angle. So why are we finding the missing angle? 1, because it's missing, and 2, because it's the easiest answer to get. It's the easiest thing to solve for. So to find the missing angle, remember, all the angles in a triangle have to add up to 180. So you have 90 plus 53, which is 143. 180 minus 143 is 37. So angle A is equal to 37 degrees. There's your first answer. Why do we do the angle first? Because it's the easiest answer to get. You don't want to do it first, that's your business. Now, step 4 is to find the missing sides. So the missing sides you have to do in 2 parts. So step 4, we're going to find x. So to find x, you're going to pretend that y doesn't exist. You're going to pretend that y doesn't exist. So if y doesn't exist, that means the adjacent doesn't exist. So that means you only have the opposite and the hypotenuse. If y doesn't exist, the adjacent doesn't exist. Why are we pretending that the y doesn't exist? Because we don't want to look at 2 different letters at the same time. We don't want to look at x and y at the same time. So we're going to deal with x first, and then deal with y. So if y doesn't exist, that means the adjacent doesn't exist. We have opposite and hypotenuse, so it's sine. Sine of the angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. So we fill in what we have. Sine 53 equals x over 5. Cross multiply. 1 times x equals 5 times the sine of 53. Let the calculator do a little bit of work. 5 sine 53. 3.993. There's your x. You got your x. Now you turn around and solve for y. To find y, you pretend that x doesn't exist. Now you switch it around. Now we pretend that x doesn't exist. If x doesn't exist, the opposite doesn't exist. So you only have adjacent and hypotenuse. So adjacent and hypotenuse, that's cosine. So cosine 53 equals y over 5. Cross multiply. 1 times y equals 5 cosine 53. 1 times y is y. .01. There's your y value missing in the problem. So it's not a hard problem, it is a longer problem. But if you break it up into these bite-sized steps, it'll be okay. So tomorrow we'll do another example, and then you'll have gone through time in class to work if you take advantage of it.